Well, now that I'm back from Captain Marvel, I guess I should see what the internet thinks of it. Why didn't Captain Marvel smile? Captain Marvel should be smiling.
5 out of 10.
Brie Larson hates white men. Boycott. SJW propaganda.
Shield critics.
She's not hot enough to be Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel should be hot. This isn't the real Captain Marvel. No one wants to see rude face Brie. I would go see Shazam. Can't act. Captain Marvel is a man. This is feminazi Mary bullshit. Sue. I'm gonna drink liberal tears when this movie bombs. Ha ha ha. What does a girl smell like? Maybe I should just stick to my own thoughts. Captain Marvel is the first MCU entry to be headlined entirely by a woman. It's also been targeted online, and I'm told there's no connection between those two factors. Brie Larson plays our lead of Captain Marvel, member of an intergalactic military unit that ends up on Earth, only to discover evidence she may have had a life here unbeknownst to her. It also stars Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and some cat as Goose, who is also in fact a cat. So, obviously I'm joking a little bit about the controversy, and I think it's pretty clear who's in the wrong here. But regardless, I do think the reviews have been a bit odd. Because of that, people are giving it overly positive reviews to go against the hate. And of course, people are giving it really negative ones to do with politics. So, as you should always do, go in with a film with an open mind as I did. And then you have a better idea of what the film is like. So, no spoilers, but as I said, I went into this with an open mind. And I kind of loved it. A lot more than I thought I would, actually. And I say that as someone who wasn't in love with the trailers or the marketing, certainly less so than other Marvel movies. The trailers didn't do much for me here. And what I found odd was that the stuff I was excited for, especially, for example, the intergalactic stuff, was the stuff that when I saw the finished film, I was a bit like, nah, it's fine. I think the beginning of this movie did not have me on board. It really had to win me over in that regard. It's almost, to me, a bit like the inverse of the first Thor movie. Like, you see the first Thor film and it's like, wow, Asgard, this is so cool. Oh, I like this world. And then it puts you on Earth. And you're like, oh, hi, Kat Dennings. And for me, it really feels like the opposite, because the Earth stuff is a lot more interesting over the course of the film, I found. So, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's go back a little bit. We begin with Captain Marvel and Star Force, as they're known. And we get a little bit of insight into this world. There's a whole Kree Skrull War, which you should know if you know anything about the comics. And we get a little backstory on that. I would say, as much, it was not hugely exciting. They did do a good job of establishing that world very well. There's a lot of exposition for the course of the movie that it's important to get out of the way. So I think it's necessary, but it's why I disliked it a little bit. You're kind of just like, okay, yeah. And especially if someone is more versed in the comics, and I will say I have read some Captain Marvel, I'm not as well versed in her as I would be some of the other comic book characters in this universe. I think they'll especially find out like, oh, alright, come on with it. But when it gets to Earth, that's when it really gets going, in my opinion. Now, I will say, as far as the Star Force members, including Jude Law's character, I won't say who was playing, because there's a real thing where they're not trying to say who he is, even though it's kind of pointless, and I don't know why they bothered hiding his identity. It doesn't seem that important, but the Star Force members don't have a lot to do in this movie, and some people might be a bit disappointed by that. It is cool to have them together. It's faithful to the comic. I do think this film owes a lot to Guardians of the Galaxy visually, and as far as the world, it doesn't have to establish all this massive intergalactic stuff, because we have the seed sown from that in the other movies, the other Guardians movies. Even the font looks a bit like the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. It does a good job of being different enough to the Guardians movies. Let me say that straight away. But it also works in the context of a wider universe, which is what it should be. So that's really good. As we probably know from the marketing, Captain Marvel doesn't really know who she is or her backstory. And that was an element that I was really excited for going into this. I figured we had enough generic origin stories. Let's see one where the character doesn't know it either. And that's kind of what I came away with as a part that I found incredibly interesting. It's actually one of the strongest parts of the movie. It makes it a sort of a mystery movie. The plot in general really is pretty lacking. that is the plot, essentially, trying to find out this character's origin. I did like the non-linear narrative, and getting to see what made Carol Danvers who she was is a bit of a fresher take on the story, because what is good is that we don't spend long seeing these flashbacks. You've seen some of the glimpses and trailers and stuff of her past life on Earth, and it doesn't spend too long on that. And that's obviously a good thing. We only get glimpses as to who she is. And I think what they've really done there that's incredibly clever is we've seen so many of these superhero movies now that we could fill in the blanks a bit. We don't need to get everything spoon-fed to us. And when we see a clip of her childhood, we're like, okay, we get it. We can see what happens here. We see all these bits and pieces, and we have an idea of what the character was like before she became Captain Marvel. So it's almost like an origin story that jumps back and forth, and it's well done. It's keeps it more interesting than most of the origin stories would. I've heard some people criticizing or complaining that Captain Marvel isn't really given a lot of character in this movie, and I don't know if that's really true. It's just sometimes it only alludes to her character. She's already the character established in the movie, so we're getting to learn her kind of in retrospect, which makes it interesting. It makes it different. I think that's why some people don't like it. But there is definitely a character under there, because throughout the course of these flashbacks, we see a character as someone who is, in some ways, unremarkable. She's been doubted her whole life. No one really believes her or her talent or her strength. But what really shows the strength of her character is that she's someone that does not give up. She's someone that keeps getting up and trying again and trying to disprove people. And while just saying that she's unremarkable might come off as a bit untrue, the fact is she succeeds against those odds at times. Like we see, obviously, she became a fighter pilot, and we see moments in the film where people doubt her that was even possible. So the question of whether or not she has much challenge in her in this movie is what I've seen as well. There is a few challenges to her, but a lot of it happens so much in the past that people might not be as accepting of that. I do think overall she is a character that can come off as a little bit too strong. We'll get to that as far as the powers aspect, but what I mean is that it never feels like she's, out of her depth. Feels like no matter what it is, she's able to handle this. And maybe it is because she's brought to Earth, which is such a primitive environment compared to what she's used to. But at times it makes you kind of feel like it's going through the motions with the character. And I think that's what some people are a bit negative towards. But I think it's something that we'll see more in a subsequent movie, whether that's another Captain Marvel movie or Avengers or what have you. We'll have that moment where she realizes that she doesn't have it all figured out. In this movie, I've also seen people say she's overpowered, and maybe a little bit. I think that, especially towards the end in the last act, it just feels like it's too easy for her. And I don't think that's a negative at the end of the movie, because it's meant to be this big defiant moment where she finds out who she is and what she's capable of. I think that works as having an arc of self-acceptance and self-realization. But whether or not that will work in the context of another movie, we'll see. But again, I do think that we're going to see her status as being so powerful questioned in subsequent movies, and probably, of course, in Endgame. As far as her character goes, I'll say this finally. I think it's missing something. And I think it's just that I compare this character quite a bit to Captain America. They're both soldiers. They both have strong moral compass. And they kind of have a sense that they want to do what's right. And I go back to that first Captain America movie where Steve Rogers jumps in a grenade. And it's this amazing moment where you just immediately get that character. That's who he is. And right away, they could just put that moment in. Nothing else was necessary. I don't think Captain Marvel has that moment that defines her character yet. And I think that's throwing a few people off. Then let's get to Brie Larson's performance as Captain Marvel, because a lot of people have been attacking this as well. And it's a pretty good performance. It is. She is very good as Captain Marvel. I've heard people say she's wooden. At the start of the movie, I was feeling that a little bit. Now, Let me explain a little bit. She's meant to be playing this sort of confident, cocky, in control of her emotions. In fact, I think Jude Law's character actually says that to her. She's basically kind of this robotic, brainwashed soldier. So she should be like that. And it's only when she gets to Earth and starts realizing parts of her life that we see that other side. So it is a good performance. And I think it's a performance that's a strong basis for great performances in the future. Like, I go back to Chris Hemsworth or even maybe Benedict Cumberbatch. They weren't amazing in their first outing as those characters, in my opinion. But in later ones, they fully realised that character. They fully understood and got to grips with it. And I think that's going to be the same with Brie Larson in later movies. Anyway, I think it's a good performance. Definitely not as bad as people are saying. I just think that there's moments where they don't give her a chance to shine. I think that's more down to the story than anything else. It is a very good performance. Then, of course, we have Nick Fury, who I absolutely loved in this movie. And getting to see him as like an earlier spy before he became this cocky super spy. It's really good to see him almost like not knowing what to do. He's very humorous. His chemistry between him and Brie Larson is just fantastic. It's a real buddy cop. I've heard people compare it to Lethal Weapon, and it definitely has that sort of sense to it. In fact, there was a moment at the very ending. I'm not going to ruin it. I thought they were going to recreate the ending of the first Lethal Weapon. I was like, wow, that I can't believe they're doing that. But they didn't in the end. But I think that might have been a little nod to it. But anyway, as far as the rest of the performances go, we have Ben Mendelsohn, who was playing Talos, whose name I'm sure I just butchered. He's like this Skrull leader. I love that character. It was really weird. I didn't expect to like that character as much as I did. I think I can't say much without saying spoilers. I'm not going to do spoilers in this video. But I think he's a better villain than most of a lot of the Marvel movies. And I think it's definitely a strong villain for an origin story, because a lot of time in these origin films, the villain is sort of an afterthought. And he was great. He was very entertaining. I couldn't figure out his accent for a while. I think he's doing just his native Australian accent, which is good. It plays off it really well, and he has moments that he really shines in. So I thought, very good villain overall. Lashana Lynch, she was really good. She doesn't get a lot to do. I would have liked to have seen a few more scenes between her and Carol. She does have one scene in particular. There's like a monologue she has that was just fantastic. She really showed how great of an actress she is there. Her daughter in the film, it's Monica Rambeau. Really charming warmth to her. This little kid who kind of aspires to be like Captain Marvel. I thought that was really nice. It reminds you kind of an older superhero film. Having the kid kind of look up to the hero. It was really, really sweet. And she has moments where she gets a few laughs as well, which is nice. As far as the larger cast, I guess we should talk about Goose, since everyone's talking about Goose. Goose is our cat in the film. He has a lot of funny moments. A nice little kind of feline companion. He's got some good scenes. I think he's going to sell $1 million as soon as this movie hits big, and it looks like it's already starting to hit big. Clark Gregg is Agent Coulson. He was in this a little bit more than I thought he was. He doesn't get too much to do, but it was nice seeing him. I think it definitely gave a sense of completion to this universe. As I said, Star Force didn't get much time, so Digimon Hinsu, unfortunately, as Korath, didn't get a lot of time to shine. So again, there's timelines open still. He could come back between now and the first Guardians movie, where he gets offed. There's certainly a chance that he could. Then we have Ronan the Accuser. Lee Pace is back. Totally wasted. Don't go in expecting some insight or anything to this character. And I think that's a shame, because he was one of the more underwritten aspects of the first Guardians movie. And they don't really give him anything. It's more of kind of a nod to hey, you remember him? It is what it is. It's fine. So yeah, like I said, I would say the side characters and the rest of the cast really shine in this, probably more so than a lot of the Marvel movies. I feel like they're a bit more fleshed out. They all have their moments. I think this really benefits from being a prequel that can tie into the rest of the Marvel universe, and it really plays off those aspects really well. We get a little bit more information. Now some characters are already established, and it plays off stories and aspects from the other movies that we know are going to come in the future. So it is really refreshing to see that. What else can I say without spoilers? Other positives. The effects are really good. There's certainly no standout bad moment like, say, Black Panther, where the effects kind of got a bit bad towards the end. Especially, say, the de-aging effects. Samuel L. Jackson in particular looks fantastic. Clark Gregg, there are a few moments where you're like, oh, they definitely smoothed his face out a bit there. It looks a little bit whatever. The music's really good. The main Captain Marvel theme, I thought that was very kind of suitably heroic and sci-fi. And the 90s music, a bit, at times I think it's a bit out of place. It's, what's the word? It's not as blatant as the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But in that one, it was tied into the plot more. This, it's not. It's non-diegetic, really, for the most part. You don't need to worry about it. I do think there are moments where it doesn't work, but when it does work, it is, you definitely get a kick when the music hits you at the right moment. Definitely. The 90s references, of course, this is set in 1995. A few of them are a little heavy-handed, and it gets to a certain point where you're like, okay, I can see this joke coming now. I get it. But overall, there was a bit less of that than I think I expected. I think one of the benefits is that the 90s, there's not too much differences between then and now. There's only a few. And I think it just points out a few minor ones. I don't think it ever gets too bad. The Stan Lee cameo is really sweet and enjoyable. Maybe a bit universe breaking. I might get to that in another video. But it was nice, it was very good to see Stan. This is it's his first MCU cameo since his death. At least in the main film universe. So bittersweet. It got a nice reaction in the cinema. And people kind of went like, oh. But it's a very sweet moment. And I'm sure we'll see him again in another few MCU movies. I know they had a few filmed. He'll definitely be in Endgame. So, is there anything else? Oh, the end credit scenes. I'm not going to spoil them, obviously. First one ties into Endgame, as you would expect. Really good scene. Got a huge reaction in the cinema I was in. Second one, as you'd expect, a bit more of a joke, but it's quite nice. It's enjoyable. I think it's what people expected, but they played it well enough that it was humorous. I'd say the pacing of the film as well. The pacing of this movie is really good. It never feels like it's entirely ground to a halt. Maybe the start is a little bit slow getting going, but once it does, it's really well paced. Perfect length as well. It feels like a film it's 2 hours long, and it feels like 2 hours is the exact right length. And they really didn't abuse it, which is fantastic. In closing, I've heard people say this is a bit like a Phase 1 movie, and to a certain degree that is true. It has an origin story aspect to it, but it's done in such a different way that it feels a bit refreshing and a bit new, and it's not as stale as it could have been. I think they're aware that maybe the audience is suffering from origin story fatigue, and it plays well enough that it's not as noticeable or as bad as you might think. It is a bit slow to start, but it's necessary for all the world building. I do think it does that quite well, but it kind of shakes off that slump once it gets to Earth and we get this fun buddy cop mystery movie between her and Samuel Jackson. I love that way it tied into the rest of the MCU. It didn't feel forced. It just felt like a story that naturally took place in this universe. It kind of reminded me really of a comic book where you just open the pages and it's like, oh, that's a character from this story and this world is from here, blah, blah, blah. And it all ties in together but doesn't feel forced. It just feels like it naturally is part of this universe. The cast as a whole is really good. There's enough surprises to make you invested in what is a pretty simple story, admittedly. It does feel a little bit smaller, and I think that's probably what the first film should be, really, quite small, but it never feels limited by that. It feels really entertaining. It's a welcome addition to the Marvel movies and an entertaining one overall. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it would, and what else can I say except higher, further, faster, beyond my expectations. Oh God, I just became a hack critic with that line. Oh, I feel dirty. Did I just become a Marvel shill? I was going to do something there, but that would be spoiling the end credits. Anyway, I don't really have a way of ending this video.
Try to keep up.
Oh, hello there. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe up top. There's lots more videos coming here, including my podcast, The Pop Cult Pod, which goes up every Tuesday normally on all major platforms with a video following on YouTube. So be sure to check that out. And if not, hope you enjoy this video. Like it, comment it. You can share it, but no one does that, do they? Alright, take care. Nobody reads comics like this. You don't just open a random page and just flick through it. Clearly not reading this.